But tonight we're going to continue our look at the fruit of the Spirit and talking about kindness. So in Galatians 5:22 through 23, it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law." When we talk about kindness, we're looking at really these other things put into practice. We're looking at love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control all put into action. We've talked a few times before already about this idea that this is really one fruit. These are just different parts of one fruit, and they cannot really be separated from each other. You can't have one without the other. They all go together. When we look at the word kindness here in this verse, it's the Greek word Christotis, or however you pronounce that. But it basically means goodness or kindness, which isn't very helpful. But it comes from a root word that means to use or make use of. Now, root words don't always give us much information about what a word means, but I think in this case, we can get a clue from this that kindness it's something in action. It's something in use. In Ephesians chapter 2, we read about the goodness of God, and He is certainly the main source of understanding kindness. Really, he's the main source of understanding all of these things. He has set the example for us. But in verses 4 through 9, it says, "But because of His great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in our trespasses. It is by grace you have been saved. And God raised us up with Christ and seated us with Him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages He might display the surpassing riches of His grace demonstrated by His kindness to us in Christ Jesus. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." Kindness in this context is the salvation that we receive through this grace that's based on faith, not something we deserve. It's not something God owes to us, but He's doing good to us because of love, because of mercy. He's actually doing something for us in Christ Jesus. What Christ did for us to make us alive with Him, that is kindness. What God did, He certainly did not owe to us, but He did it, and in a loving way, He put love into action, mercy into action, and that is then kindness demonstrated, or it's demonstrated in kindness. In the Old Testament, it's written in Hebrew, and the word for kindness there is hesed, which is actually it's actually translated into quite a few different things. So in some translations, you'll see it a lot of times as loving kindness. Sometimes it's called loyal love, and there's a few other ways that it's translated. But it's related to loyalty. It's like a faithful, doing good faithfully in a loyal way, in a reliable way. And so that it's not just every once in a while you do something good by accident or something like that. It is you are loyally doing good for somebody. In Genesis 32 in verse 10, this is Jacob after he has left Laban and he's on his way back to his father's house. And he says this to God in Genesis 32 verse 10, "I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. Indeed, with only my staff I came across the Jordan, but now I have become two camps." He had 11 sons and a daughter at this point. He has a lot of people in his family. He's also extremely wealthy. If you look at just the number of animals he was able to give to Esau as a gift, it was a very large number. And so he's extremely wealthy. He has servants as well. So he says, I'm not worthy of all of this. God has really blessed him. He started off with nothing, and he recognizes that it is only because of God that he has become this successful in life. And God certainly did not owe that to him. Jacob didn't even know much about God when he left home, it doesn't seem like. But God was actively reaching out to him, helping him to know him. And so he was growing in his relationship with God and his knowledge of God, while God was also blessing him in this way because of his plan to use him in bringing about the gospel through Jesus coming through the nation that would come from him. In Joshua chapter 2, we read about Rahab the harlot in Jericho, and she hid the spies that came there to save them from being killed. And in verses 12 and 13 of Joshua 2, she says, Now therefore, please swear to me by the Lord that you will indeed show kindness to my family, because I showed kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will deliver us from death. So in her case, Rahab showed kindness to them in helping them escape from death, and a kindness returned would be to help her and her family escape death when the Israelites came to destroy the city. It's not something that they necessarily had to do, but in this case, it was a returned kindness, but it's a loyal love. It's a loyal kindness. It's something that she says, give me your word, give me a sign that you will do this thing, that you're going to be loyal, faithful in delivering us from death. And of course, they did that, and she became one, also involved in bringing about the gospel, because Jesus is descended from her. In 1 Samuel 20, in verses 13 through 15, when Saul is trying to kill David, and Jonathan, the son of Saul, is talking with David about this, and he's going to try to find out if Saul, his father, really is trying to kill David. He says this to David, But if my father intends to bring evil on you, then may the Lord punish me, and ever so severely, if I do not tell you and send you on your way in safety. May the Lord be with you, just as he has been with my father. And as long as I live, treat me with the Lord's loving devotion, that I may not die, and do not ever cut off your loving devotion from my household, not even when the Lord cuts off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. So this loving devotion here is that same word hesed, which is translated kindness in some other places, and some other translations would say kindness here as well. But he says, this is the kindness that you can show me, this loving devotion, that you will not cut off my family. You will not kill us all when you become king, because they're from the previous king's family. That would be something often done. But he says, you should show us this loving devotion, this loyal love, this kindness of not cutting off my family. And David does this, and he even goes beyond just not killing them. In 2 Samuel 9, in verses 1 through 3, then David asked, Is there anyone left from the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for the sake of Jonathan? So here, he's not even asking just about Jonathan's family, but even Saul's family. Can I show them kindness for the sake of Jonathan? Jonathan is dead at this point. But it says, And there was a servant of Saul's family named Ziba. They summoned him to David, and the king inquired, Are you Ziba? I am your servant, he replied. So the king asked, "Is there anyone left of Saul's family to whom I can show the kindness of God?" Ziba answered, "There is still Jonathan's son, who is lame in both feet." And we keep reading, and we find that David took Jonathan's son into his own family. He basically treated him as his son and took care of him. He ate at his table, and so he showed him this kindness. And so this is the same word that we saw before, where he says loving devotion. This kindness is the same word, and this is the fulfillment of his covenant with Jonathan. But it's also good to note that David doesn't take credit for the kindness, saying, "Look at how good I am." He says, "I want to show them the kindness of God." This is the fruit of the Spirit, isn't it? He's saying, I've learned from God what I need to do, how to show kindness. And so David was, as we heard earlier, a man after God's own heart. And so he is seeking to show the kindness of God in his kingship towards those who are needing some help. And he does that. In 2 Samuel 10, in verses 1 and 2, it says, sometime later, the king of the Ammonites died and was succeeded by his son Hanun. And David said, "I will show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, just as his father showed kindness to me." So David sent some of his servants to console Hanun concerning his father. So here we see an act of kindness toward another king of another nation, of the Ammonites, where he's consoling him concerning his father. So reaching out to someone when their loved one has died in order to console them is an act of kindness. And in this case, Hanun didn't accept it. He actually turned it into a terrible incident where they went to war with each other. But David was showing kindness through sending these servants to console Hanun concerning his father, as apparently, I assume what he means as his father showed kindness to me means that Nahash had sent servants to comfort David when David's father had died. I assume that's what that means. But we see that this is one way to show kindness, and we read about this idea in Romans 12 in the New Testament in verses 14 through 16. "Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but enjoy the company of the lowly. Do not be conceited." So in this idea of kindness, he doesn't use that word here, but that's what he's describing. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. This idea of consoling those who've lost someone is the idea of weeping with those who weep. That's a way of showing kindness. It's also an act of kindness to rejoice with those who rejoice. If something good has happened in somebody's life and they're really happy about it, be happy with them. It may not affect you. It may not be something that just immediately makes you happy, but for their sake, be happy with them and rejoice with them for what is good in their life. But we also see that blessing those who persecute you that's another way of showing kindness, and even keeping company with the lowly, enjoying their company, not seeing ourselves as better than those that are on the lower levels of society, and we're happy to spend time with them and keep their company. That is, in a sense, an act of kindness. It certainly is not kind if we don't keep their company and think that we are too good to be with them. In 2 Chronicles 24, in verse 22, it says concerning King Joash that he failed to remember the kindness that Zechariah's father Jehoiada had extended to him. Instead, Joash killed Jehoiada's son. You can read the rest of that, but the point I want us to see here is that Zechariah's father Jehoiada, who was the high priest, had showed kindness to Joash by actually saving his life as a child. His wife had saved him initially, but Jehoiada raised Joash up in the temple, keeping him hidden from Athaliah. And eventually, when Joash was 7 years old, he got everyone together, let them know that he had the true descendant of the king there. They crowned him king, killed Athaliah, and then he continued to guide Joash in a very good way until Jehoiada died. But unfortunately, after he died, this is what happened. King Joash became wicked and even killed Jehoiada's son, Zechariah the prophet. And so we see from Jehoiada's example that to save a child, raise them up, guide them in their life, that is a way of showing kindness. I'm not sure if we could necessarily say it's kindness to do that to our own children. It's a responsibility to do it to our own children. But when we do it especially to other children who are not our own, those who adopt or just raise up other people's children, that is a kindness. They're doing it not because they're owed this, or not because they owe something, but because they just care about that person. They care about that child, and they want them to do well in life, to have what they need, and they show them kindness in that way. In Psalm 141, we have another way of showing kindness. In verse 4 and 5, David writes, "Do not let my heart be drawn to any evil thing or take part in works of wickedness with men who do iniquity. Let me not feast on their delicacies. Let the righteous man strike me. Let his rebuke be an act of loving devotion. It is oil for my head. Let me not refuse it, for my prayer is ever against the deeds of the wicked." And this loving devotion, that is hesed, the same word as kindness or loving kindness, loyal love, loyal devotion, loving devotion. So rebuking him, striking him, can be an act of kindness. If we are being corrected, then even this discipline can be kindness to us. And so we need to show kindness to others as well by rebuking them when that is needed, by disciplining them when that is needed. It is not kind to allow someone to continue doing what is going to hurt them and others. We need to be kind enough to correct. And so we see that kindness, this fruit of the Spirit, part of the fruit of the Spirit, it's a love in loyal action. It's a reliable action where they know they can rely on us, just like we can rely on God because He is the perfect example of kindness, of loyal love. That's how we should be to others as well, that they know if they need help, they can come to us. It's love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control in action toward others. And kindness can be sharing in emotional times with others, rejoicing with those who rejoice, weeping with those who weep. It can be raising children who are not yours. It can be blessing those who curse you. It can be rebuking someone in order to correct them. It's doing good to others that we owe nothing. We're not doing it because we owe it. We're doing it because it's good. And kindness is what God has done for us. We learn from God how to be kind. That is why it is a fruit of the Spirit of God. All right, well, that's the lesson for tonight. Thank you very much.